Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
Our reading is from Matthew 7, verse 24. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. The word of the Lord.
All right. Hello, everybody. A lot of you probably don't really know who I am. There's a reason for that. To start off, I'm actually not a formal member of St. Andrews. I have spent most of my time with camp and also helping Caleb with WNYG and many other youth leaders throughout the years as well. And when Pastor Peter asked me to come talk today, I said, I'd love to. It'd be my pleasure. So, just a little bit about me, real quick, so you get a little understanding of where I kind of come from in my life. I love the outdoors. That's why camp really spoke to me. I love all types of fishing, camping, you name it, I've probably done it. I'm also a big nerd. I love comic books. I love video games. I love anything Marvel related, you name it. I love it. I love cooking. It's one of my favorite things to do when I'm getting back home from work. I love to make something fresh, something new, something that just livens me up after the day. And in sports, I am regrettably at times a Minnesota fan of all sports, whether it be Vikings, Timberwolves, Wild, you name it, Frost. I will watch games, whether it is begrudgingly or excitedly. Another thing for me is music. I have always been involved with choir almost all my life. Music has always been a very driving force for me. It actually is going to be part of what I'm going to talk to you here about tonight a little bit, but it's always been something that's been very important to me. And then, of course, camp. I started going to camp back in, I believe, fifth grade it was, with Caleb Rogge. I had attended a couple other camps before that, but then started going there. And then I spent many years as a camper, counselor, 2 years as a staff member, and then also 2 years as an assistant director under Burke as well. And the final thing about me is WNYG. Like I said, I've been helping back when TJ was still here. I was helping out with WNYG. I've helped through the years there. Now with Caleb back here, I have lent him my services once again, come out of retirement, some might say. But it's been so fun to get to see some of these high schoolers that I actually was a part of their time back when Fuse was around. These are some of the kids that were actually in Fuse with me when I was helping Blake and Paul back then. So it's really fun to see that kind of come full circle. Now we're going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. So my faith growing up. Interesting enough, I grew up in a Missouri Synod. So when I first went to Spirit in the Pines, the very first thing my dad told me was, now just be prepared. They may say some things that you've never heard before. And I was, as a fifth grader, thought, I have no idea what that means. But okay, sure. And so over the years, as I became more affiliated with St. Andrews, I saw female pastors. That was not something we see in the Missouri Synod. And I was like, oh, well, this is pretty nice. I like this. This is a little bit more for me, I think. And so growing up there, I was very involved in the youth programs. I was a small group leader. At a young age, I was moved into a full-time leadership position with a small group as well. I was one of the first large group leaders of my age group to kind of come through those times. I helped out with VBS. I was involved with the high school youth program. I was in the youth band. I was the quintessential good Christian boy, as I would like to say back then, and still now will say. However, I spent most of my time with St. Michael's. There was a incident back in about 2012, 2013. I'm not going to go into too much details to what happened, but essentially there was, we'll call it a schism that basically split the church in half. There was what I would like to consider the old guard, my parents who grew up there and like raised me there, where they did not agree what was going on with some of the things the pastors were doing. And then there were the newer families who were just coming in looking for a faith home of their own and having really no idea what the history of the church was. During this time period, I found out a lot of things that I was not aware of, kind of under the underside of the church that we don't always get to see as members. And it really, we'll say, rocked my faith. When we look at that verse of the sand versus the stone, this was a moment where I felt that I had almost built my house on sand. I had done all these things. I thought everything my pastor had told me was exactly the right thing, and I was going to be a good Christian, and that's where it was going to end up. But when all this took place, I had this kind of moment where I felt the rug was yanked out from underneath me. I didn't really understand the purpose of what was going on. I wasn't sure if my faith was solid. I wasn't sure if my faith was real. There was a lot of uncertainty in that time. And I, at the time, of course, was just about to head off to college. The best time to have a lot of uncertainty in your life when it comes to faith and family and friends and things like that. And so, like I said, I've got that broken foundation. I didn't feel like that solid rock that I had built my faith on was there anymore. I wasn't sure what was there. I felt like I was adrift in an ocean with nothing around me. Going through my collegiate years, my freshman year, I decided that instead of applying to be a camp staff, I knew individuals like Caleb Rogge were applying. I knew Matt Gribben was applying. And I thought, I can't compete with that. I'll work at the car wash for the summer and I'll make probably more money than they might, and have a good time and enjoy my summer. So nothing really happened freshman year, but just kind of went through my new college days. Sophomore year came around and I changed my mind and I said, you know what, maybe this is the year that camp staff is for me. Thankfully, Burke was very kind enough to hire me that year. And I had one of the best summers of my life. It was a wonderful time being up there, coming back to a place that made me feel so welcome as a camper. Back then, Burke would love to do a thing where he would say, okay, who's from Chanhassen? All the Chanhassen kids would raise their hand. And who's from Eden Prairie? And then they would raise their hand. He goes, and then who's from Bloomington? And I was the sole Bloomington kid in the middle of everyone saying, yep, that's me. I'm doing it. And so to come back to a place that accepted me and allowed me to be myself as much as it did was a big moment for me. And then junior year came around. It was academically probably one of the hardest years of my life. I was taking things like organic chemistry. I was looking to go into genetic counseling at the time. And so I was really involved academically. It was really a hard year. There was a lot of tough classes. 8 a.m. labs were never fun, but that's what you kind of dealt with in the sciences. And so around October of that year, it would have been October 31st, Halloween. I'm sitting in the cafeteria of our commons, and I get a phone call from my mother. And I think, oh, she calls. We chat about weekly. Like, this must be that time for her to call. And the moment I pick up the phone, I can tell something's not right. Just something in her voice just is a little off. And she goes, hey, Dan, I need to tell you something. If you're in a busy place, you might want to go somewhere a little more private. And I'm like, okay. All right, we'll see what that means. Okay, so I move out to the bleachers overlooking the river valley in our football field where there's no one there, and I'm on the phone with my mom. And she shares with me that sorry, even after all these years, it's hard to talk about sometimes. My grandma had passed away. She had fallen, and sadly, she had not survived the fall. That devastated me. It was the first loss of a life in my life that I'd ever experienced. Both my grandpas had passed away before I was born, so I never really got to know them. But losing my grandma Kibat was the first real loss I experienced in my life. And from there on, my junior year just went downhill. I felt probably my first bout of depression during that time period. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't even want to sing. I was involved with choir my entire life, and I didn't want to sing. And that was just the weirdest thing, but I didn't even think about it at the time. It was just, I don't want to. I don't feel the drive. I don't feel the need. I don't need any of this. And then amidst all that, I ended up applying for camp again. And then I got hired back again. And I kind of came into that summer thinking like, okay, well, We're going to do our best. We're going to hopefully be kind of recovered. I think we're doing better now, and we'll see how that goes. And for those of you who don't know, at camp, we do campfire talks every evening where the staff members will stand up and share their stories to the campers. And we usually try to tailor those stories to the age groups, whether it be the second and third graders who get more of like oh, I got scared by a storm and then God made me feel strong, to the high schoolers where we maybe take a little deeper talk or a little more tricky subjects. And so I was lucky enough to get one of the eighth and ninth grade talks to where I thought, I feel like I need to share this story, but I don't know why. And admittedly, when I first thought of sharing it, I thought this feels really selfish. Like this is more for me. Am I really doing this for these kids? Like this just feels very me thing. And so I based this entire talk around a song that we sang my junior year of college. It's called Lullaby by Daniel Elder. It's a very beautiful piece. It has kind of a dual meaning. On one hand, it is a mother tucking their child into bed and singing them a lullaby. But on the other hand, it's also saying goodbye to a loved one. And so I based kind of this entire talk, and I basically told this whole story, but in a little more detail at sometimes. And using this song at the end to kind of, I like to use music to kind of tie in a message whenever I do my campfire talks. And so I played this song, and I turned around. If you've ever been up to camp and you've been in the sanctuary or the chapel out looking the lake, with the sunset going, it's probably one of the best views you'll ever see. I turned around and I cried. I didn't let the campers see it. I didn't let anyone, I tried to keep that kind of hidden. And again, I felt terrible. I felt so bad that I was having this moment for myself when I should be doing this for the campers. Those conflicted feelings kind of kept bubbling up, and I wasn't sure how to feel about this. Even after it was all done, I kind of left and I went out on the deck. Caleb came out there and he's like, dude, that was awesome. Like that was such a good talk. And I still felt terrible about it. I just didn't see like, why did I do this? What was the point of all this? Why did I bring up these feelings, this hurt, this anger that I have? I don't even know where my faith is at this point. I'm trying to tell high schoolers and young kids what their faith is when I don't even know what mine is. What business do I have doing any of this? And then we'll say the light at the end of the tunnel kind of appeared to me. At the end of that sermon, or if not sermon, campfire talk, sorry, I walked back into the chapel and we were all kind of mulling around. People were heading out and doing their thing, going back to their cabins to brush their teeth, etc. And one of the counselors came up to me and he said, "Hey, Dan, I need you to know that I really needed to hear this talk. My grandpa just passed away right before I came up to camp. And I felt a lot of these things that you were feeling." And is it kind of that moment where you look up and you're like, okay, I get it. This was the plan all along. It may not have been the one that I wanted or the one that I saw, but you had this all figured out from the very beginning, whether I knew it or not. And what I love the most about that place up at Spirit in the Pines is that it gave me a location to heal my faith. Oftentimes, we're told through our lives that the best way to learn something is to teach it. So oftentimes we are asked these questions by second and third graders that stump us even as adults. They'll say, why do bad things happen to good people? And why do good things happen to bad people? How do you answer that to a second or third grader? And so it makes you think, it makes you wonder, okay, what does this really mean? And I realized that even though my foundation felt like it was built on sand, camp gave me a solid base to build back up off again. I was able to regrow my faith. I was able to build it back brick by brick. And by the end of my time up at camp, I felt this feeling that I had finally kind of rediscovered my faith, and it was my own. It wasn't what my pastors told me. It wasn't what my parents said was the things I should be listening or hearing. It was something that I built by myself in order to help others, which was a really weird thing because, again, all these feelings felt very selfish at the time, but it really helped me understand what it was. And so my goal whenever I was up at camp, even in the later years as assistant director, was I wanted camp to be a place that any individual could come up, no matter where their faith was at, no matter where they were at with their home lives, no matter what was going on, that they could come up to a location that loved them. And not just the people, but the place itself loves them. And so to kind of closing thoughts here, it's just that reminder that even in those times when our faith feels its shakiest and we don't see the plan that God has laid out for us, that there is a solid rock. In my case, I was lucky enough to find camp. That was the place for me. I encourage you all to kind of look inwardly and maybe find those locations. We talk about it a lot at WYG is where are these places that ground you? What brings you to your faith? And I hear stories of being out in nature, being with my friends, my family, listening to music, things like that. Try to find those things and those places, those moments that ground you in your faith, even when the waves are rocking your boat or have completely capsized you. Or if you're lucky enough to be standing strong on a solid foundation, great. But even then, stay grounded in that faith because that's what will carry you through those hard times. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.